All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Hammer and Chisel Performance Podcast. I'm your host, John Heck. Before we dive into this episode, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, Troponent Supplements. They've got me decked out in the cutoff, the hat, and then before every episode, I take my favorite product of theirs, ATP. It's got 300 milligrams of caffeine and a powerful nootropic that gives me just an acute burst and focus, mood enhancement, memory enhancement, and it just helps me lock in on these podcasts so I can go into a great conversation with all the guests that I have on here. So getting into today's guest conversation, the guy I have on, he is a fellow Tar Heel. He and I were teammates at UNC. We went on to become colleagues. He's a fellow strength and conditioning coach. And he's a guy that I just have a lot of respect for as a coach, as a man, as a leader. And if you follow sports performance, you're probably familiar with him. You've probably seen him on social media. AJ Blue, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. It's good to catch back up with you. You know, like you said, former teammate, former colleague, man. You know, so it's we got a lot of history. So I'm excited to kick this thing off and reconnect with you a little bit.
Yeah, so am I, man. And now you're coaching in the NFL, strength and conditioning coach for the Miami Dolphins. A little bit of a change of scenery out in the big city of Miami compared to quiet Chapel Hill, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely a big change. The traffic mostly.
Oh yeah,
The traffic out here is insane, man. People drive insanely fast, and I'm a high intensity guy, but this is a little different for me. So, country boy out in the city been a big adjustment, but it's been fun.
yeah. No, I can relate to that. When I moved on from UNC and I went to the Houston Texans, just the big city living, the traffic, all of that, man. It's a little bit of a culture shock. You staying out of trouble out there?
Yeah, man. It's easier to get into trouble than it is to stay out of it. But, I've always let my passion kind of dictate and drive, where I go. And so for me it's been pretty easy, to limit the distractions, cut out the white noise. And, sometimes I forget I'm even in Miami. It's to my place and it's back to the facility. It's to my place, get something to eat, so like I said, I'm just really trying to prove my worth right now. Everything else is secondary, and it's like I said, it's a place to get distracted, but I'm focused right now, so I'm in a happy spot.
Yeah, that's good to hear, man. And just the demands of the job of being a strength and conditioning coach, it makes it hard to fall into some of those distractions. I mean, you don't have time for it. You're spending all day, every day at the facility. You're putting in those hard hours. It's a demanding job. But man, obviously you and I, we have different origin stories and we're going to get into yours. But in terms of our career paths, kind of similar. Obviously you and I, we both played ball at Carolina. You got to have all the glory scoring touchdowns. I had the honor of opening up some holes for you to score some of those touchdowns.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Coach Blue, he played running back. I played right tackle. But then from there, you and I went on to become strength and conditioning coaches. We both coached together for years at our alma mater at UNC. And then we both transitioned into NFL strength and conditioning. And then another thing we have in common, we've both, in my opinion, leveraged social media as a tool in our favor. And that's something that we'll get into here in a little bit. But just touching on the transition from college to NFL, I'm kind of curious to hear some of your thoughts here initially and compare them to mine. Now, obviously, you're working for an NFL organization and we're not going to go into specifics of the training and individual players. And those are things that stay under wraps in the offseason, and we're going to respect that. But just generally speaking, what are some of the differences you're already seeing working in the college sector versus the NFL setting?
I would say the first thing is business first. There's the players are everything in the NFL. And you can talk about development, you can talk about this, you can talk about that, but if the players are healthy, you're in a really good spot. But if your players aren't healthy, that's when everything kind of comes to, crashing down. So no matter what, the objective, the goal, the everything is keeping the players on the field. So availability is more important than who it is or what it is or where it is if they're available, then everything is good. And so I would say, you know, the biggest thing from college to the NFL is availability. You know, the developmental piece is huge in college. You know, guys being in shape is a huge thing in college, and then the hierarchy in college it's a little different. You know, clearly there's hierarchy in the NFL, but everybody walking around the building has respect for each other, and you know, as a professional who's in charge, what the hierarchy is, but nobody throws it around like, hey, look at me, you know, or step to the side when I'm walking through. Like, there's none of that. Like, it's professionals being professionals and respecting each other as such.
Yeah, you don't go into an NFL facility, you don't have the walk-ons, you don't have the freshman who's never played a down of meaningful football in their life. Like you said, number one, everyone there is at an elite level. Everyone there has made it, is an elite athlete, has proven themselves to some degree.
Yeah.
And just you're dealing with grown men, right? There's an elevated level of maturity there that you don't have at the college level. And when people ask me about the differences or pros and cons, college and NFL, if you want to be focused, like you said, on development, like your whole thing is getting guys bigger, faster, stronger, college is probably the place for you because you get the guys year round. When you go to the NFL, like these guys are almost finished products.
Yeah.
Right. They're grown men at this point. We've weeded out these guys. The cream has risen to the top. And at that point, you're not really getting these guys necessarily a lot bigger and faster and stronger. Like you said, it's a lot more about keeping guys healthy and finding ways to add years to their career. And I think it's a perfect role for you with you had a large specialty in the RTP setting back at UNC. But yeah, it really seems like the integration of sort of a rehab approach into training is a lot more prevalent in the NFL. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It's definitely that. It's a 1A, 1B type deal. You know, kind of how we take the RTP approach. You know, I want to be as close to training as possible, even when I'm hurt. It's more about what I can do versus what I can't do. And so, we're always trying to find ways to enhance, guys' availability, their, whether it's soft tissue, whether it's joint health, range of motion, whatever it is to help elevate a guy's game, which is already highly elevated at this point. It's just about the small things, really. There's nothing that's really glaring that you have to focus on. It's really come down to a science and being, diligent in the process and really, really having to use your brain and your knowledge to, get the best out of each situation.
Yeah. And I mean, those athletes, they're multi-million-dollar commodities to the organization. And there's a lot of that additional pressure at the NFL level. Like if guys are getting hurt, if guys aren't available on Sunday, if they're not available for OTAs, generally speaking, the strength and conditioning staff is getting a sideways look from the rest of the organization. So I mean, it's added pressure, and I'm sure you've felt a little bit of that.
Yeah, I love it too, because this is what I've wanted. I want that pressure. I feel like I'm better under pressure because now I have to. We get in spaces sometimes where we get comfortable, we get complacent, we get into a certain way of thinking, and that's dangerous in my opinion. We're never done growing, we're never done learning. There's so much information out there. You'll never know enough. And the more I go through this stuff, the more I realize we really don't know a whole lot. And I don't care. I'm speaking about everybody. There's some guys with more knowledge than others, but there's just so many missing pieces So now it's about understanding the context of the situation, understanding the context of the player, the coaching staff, and what the needs are and what they're looking for. It's just so many things within training that you have to be conscious of. It's really challenged me to be better. And I feel like already I am better, and it's been a really good process for me.
Yeah, you've always been a guy who's wanted that pressure and wanted to be pushed, and that's part of your character that's gotten you here today. I mean, there's a lot of coaches out there who just they get stuck in their ways. Like they make it to a big job and they're like, all right, I made it. I don't have to learn anything more. And you and I have worked with guys like that.
Yeah.
And I relate to you in that having spent several years in one spot, you start to get a little bit comfortable, right? You know the lay of the land. You've been around these players, these coaches for years. You know the system like the back of your hand, and a little bit of that complacency can start to creep in. And I felt like, okay, when I went on to the Houston Texans, that I had this big new challenge in front of me. I had to reprove myself. I had to learn an entirely new system.
Yeah.
You're dealing with an entirely different breed of athlete. And I love that. Like, I wanted to be pushed. So man, I'm happy for you. And I know you're over there thriving. But man, I'd love to get into your origin story a little bit. I think your background, your upbringing, you faced a lot of adversity. And I think that adversity that you went through and overcame really helped shape you into the leader that you went on to become, because I thought leadership was one of your best qualities as a player and as a coach. So if you don't mind, I'd love it if you shared your background, your story, and just some of the adversity that you had to overcome to get where you are.
Yeah, man. So it's really kind of hard to have a starting spot because adversity started early for me. I grew up in an impoverished community. So that's already, put me back, in a deficit from the start. But I would say, I guess I'll start as early as 7th grade. I was kicked off the team in 7th grade. Football was all I've ever known. It's the only sport I've played dominantly. I wrestled. I played baseball a little bit, basketball a little bit as well. But football is something that I loved. I've always cherished it since 5 years old. I've played every year up until that point. And I think a kid coming from where I came from, I was very defensive, and you grow up to learn not to take any crap from anybody at any point. It don't matter who they are, and that's where, as you grow, you understand like awareness matters, and you realize like some things don't require a reaction or a response. And so for me, being kicked off the football team in 7th grade was not even eye-opening, honestly, because I made a lot of mistakes after that. But that was my first thing I had to go through. And then I came back my 8th grade year and I couldn't afford cleats. So I played my entire 8th grade season in a pair of Nikes. And man, it was rough. I was slipping all over the grass, but I was still, I still scored a lot of touchdowns. I think I scored 24 my 8th grade year in Nike shoes. And then so I ended up failing the 8th grade and I was retained. And so I spent another year in 8th grade. All my friends moved on. And then when I got to 9th grade, 8th grade, I ruptured my patella tendon running track. And so I go into 9th grade, my spring year, going to 9th grade. We get to summer football. I make varsity. Everything is great. 9th grade, all conference safety. 10th grade, I moved to quarterback, all conference quarterback. 11th grade, obviously player of the year, and then my brother passed in 11th grade. And that was my father figure. Like everything I did was for my brother. There was a lot of incentives in there. Scoring touchdowns, I get shoes, I get clothes. Like my brother was my dad in a sense. And when he passed, it was really rough. But 3 months later, I had my son, which was kind of like a driving force for everything that came after, in terms of it was more fear-based because I didn't know that I was an intelligent dude. You know, I had been told, I grew up in the hood. You don't get patted on the back for making good grades. You don't get patted on the back for doing your homework or even having, you know, some type of academic, being proficient in the academic way. Like, you don't get patted on the back for that kind of stuff. So, um, being, that was, it was more fear-based that I didn't want to be in a situation. I don't want my son to be in a situation that I was in growing up, without having a dad present. And then my brother being gone, that was tough for me. But all throughout that time, man, it was me and my brother was figuring life out on our own, basically. We would sleep in the car, at night. My mom had a little broke down Toyota Sentra or something like that. I can't remember, a Camry maybe. But I mean, she would go out at night, and we would, be locked out of the house, and we had to find somewhere to sleep. So we would sleep in the car. We find out how to break into cars. We would break into my mom's car, and we would be in there sleep. Didn't matter the weather, cold, hot. We hear door shut 3, 4, 5 a.m. We pop up. It's my mom coming home, and we get out of the car. We walk in and we go to bed, and then we wake up the next morning and we do it again. And so that was kind of my life as a child, eating Debbie cakes for dinner, no curfew. I never had a curfew growing up. I learned everything out on the streets, basically. And so, fast forward to my senior year, academically ineligible to get to college. So I go to military school, had great support system once I got there. Got the UNC, tore my ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, hamstring, had nerve damage, had 8 hours worth of surgery. I was out for 20 months. And that's why I'm kind of deficient now in my range of motion. And that's why flexion and extension should be the primary things that you focus on as soon as you come out of surgery, because I focused on strength. And strength is an easy thing for me because that's just how I'm built. And football players are alphas, so what's another way, what's an easy way to exude strength is lifting weights. And so my main thing was, all right, let's get back strong again so I can play. And I just I didn't check the boxes of flexion and extension. And I think that's what led me to my love of RTP as I became a coach. But I was out 20 months, came back, really I think I had a decent career as a player. I think I was more impactful off the field than I was on it, but that's something that I can live with. And I'm okay with that because I gave it everything I had and I tried to bring others with me. And so that's just kind of how my life been. Even since a kid, I never knew that I would be here, but even through the midst of shootouts, even through the midst of sleeping in cars, even through the midst of waking myself up at 6 a.m. to go and knock on my friend's door to go train at the park with nobody telling me to do that, I always try to bring others with me. And that was just a byproduct of who I am, and I didn't even know that at the time. So, that's for a short story. I've been through a whole lot. It's probably 10 other pieces in there that I missed, from a year-to-year basis and everything that I dealt with. But I got to college and I got into some trouble in college as well. And it was just all a product of me not knowing and me carrying the same characteristics that I had growing up and the people that were around me, because that was all I knew. And to me, that was the way that I should be. And then you get to college and you meet people from, Texas, you meet people from London, you meet people from Florida, you meet people from Cali, and you meet people from all different types of backgrounds, and you realize everybody's not like this,
Yeah.
When people pick up trash, people don't litter, people say, yes, sir, no, sir. People do their homework, all things that I considered worthless at the time, I started to pick up on, and I realized like the successful people were the people that did those kind of things. And so I'm a guy that's really high in awareness. That's one of the things that you learn growing up in an impoverished community. Always being on your toes. Anything can happen at any time. So knowing your surroundings, knowing where you are, that's one of the things that I feel like I'm very proficient at, and I really have. I think I have great awareness. So just looking at the people around me, understanding how they move, and realizing the difference between success and failures. And so I just basically just picked up on it as I grew, and led me to who I am and where I am today.
Boy, remind me what town you grew up in?
Gastonia is still one of the most violent cities in the state of North Carolina, really in the U.S.
Yeah, and I'm sure you probably were exposed to a lot of that violence and, whether or drug activity, gang activity, things of that nature. Was that a part of your upbringing as well, being exposed to the violence, the drugs?
Oh yeah, every day. I mean, to be honest, to be frank, the drug dealers were my superheroes.
Yeah.
When the ice cream truck pull up and they pull out a wad of money and pay for every kid ice cream in the neighborhood, like, yeah, I wanted to be them for sure. Like that was who coming from where I came from, everybody did. You know what I'm saying? And so the ones that don't make it out, they become that guy. But at some point that ends. You know what I'm saying? Whether you go to jail or whether you die or whether you become the addict because you deal with the drug so often. And so, yeah, man, I was exposed to a lot. Like I said, my own brother, he passed away from gun violence. So it hit close home for me. And then a lot of other my friends and people from our neighborhood died from gun violence and drugs as well. So yeah, a lot of exposure early, basically when I came out the womb. I think, a lot of people take for granted their athletic ability. And that's something that has always been in the back of my mind. Like, why am I here? How did I get here? And how can I take advantage of it? And in the hood, everybody athletic to some capacity, but I was always the one that stood out. And that was something that I wanted to, that was my thing. I didn't sell drugs or nothing like that. So you either could fight, you either could play sports, or you made a lot of money. And so sports became my deal, and everybody kind of, looked up to me because of that.
I know you mentioned your brother was that father figure for you and obviously a big positive influence for you. With him dying in the manner that he did, how did you overcome that, losing that figure in your life and still managing to stay on a good track? I mean, a lot of people can see their brother die like that and they get caught up in wanting revenge or or it just completely derails them in some form or another. How did you overcome your brother's death?
Man, it's I don't know. If I'm being honest, it's just something that's inside of me. Something that God gave me, something that I can't really put a calculation on or, come up with a conclusion. It's just my mindset is never over with for me. Even after college, not making it to the NFL because I broke my L3 vertebrae and fell into physicals, and then going to NASCAR, working on the pit crew for a couple months, ended up failing that physical. And then I went and worked at a glass factory for probably a year. But in the midst, throughout that entire year, I always knew it was something bigger and better for me. So I was completely fine working there, and I owned it. Like, it was an opportunity for me it was a humbling experience. I was back in my hometown where I didn't want to be. And so I had two options. I could start doing what everybody else was doing, or I could lock in and own my time there and try to be the best person I could be. And in the midst, try to stay connected with the people in college. So that's kind of what happened. I would hit Larry Fedora up here and there. I'm an introvert, so I never like to reach out to people. So that's always been a hard thing for me. But Fedora called me one day. I was going to an interview at Cintas, a uniform company, and my phone died, and I went to Subway to charge it up. And Larry Fedora called me when I was at Subway and offered me the job to be a strength coach. And so that's kind of how everything started.
Before that call, was there any idea in your mind that strength and conditioning could be the path that you would take?
Never, never. I mean, to be honest, I had no true love for strength and conditioning. I've always been naturally strong, naturally athletic. If I didn't know what an A skip was, all you had to do was show me one time and I got it. So I've always had those traits. But no, I never wanted to be a strength coach. I wanted to be a running backs coach. And at the time there were no GA spots open. And so Fedora called me. He was like, hey, I don't have any GA spots open, but there's a spot in the weight room. You can hit that for a year. And then once the GA spot open up, you can come upstairs. I'm like, bet, let's do it. And then after that year of being a strength coach, man, it changed my life. Seeing guys on a day-to-day basis, not just knowing a group of guys of 6 or maybe 13 or whatever it may be. I knew everybody. I knew all 120. And throughout that year, I got to know everybody. And man, you could really tell when the guy was going to have a shitty day going out to practice. His body language told it all. How he stepped, how he walked, how he carried himself, how he ate in the cafeteria can give you all the clues that you wanted if you wanted to pursue a better relationship with these guys. And that's exactly what it did for me. And after that year was up, I had decided that this is what I want to do.
Yeah, going through my coaching career, I've always kind of gone back and forth about, what are the more important qualities for a strength coach? Kind of the X's and O's, the science, the programming, the academic knowledge side of things, or more of the art of coaching. So by the time this podcast comes out, I'll have already released another podcast I did with the head strength and conditioning coach for Troy, Daryl Bauer, who's a guy I work for. And he had what he called the two swords philosophy. And it was based in samurai tradition, where the samurai would have two swords, a long sword for defense and a short sword that's the kill sword. And he would make the comparison, strength coach has two swords, right? You got the long sword. That's your knowledge of the science, the X's and O's, the programming, all those things. And then you got your short sword. That's the art of coaching, right? That's your ability to communicate, your ability to form relationships, to gain trust, your ability to push guys and know which buttons to push with certain guys, when to pull back, things like that. And, going through my career, I was always kind of early on, I was more gravitated towards the X's and O's, the science, the program. That was kind of my background and upbringing into coaching. And, I kind of wanted that to be the more important factor. Like I wanted my knowledge of programming and just the X's and O's of training and the physiology, that to be the big factor that would influence players and make an impact on the team. But, the more I worked in strength and conditioning, the more I really believe it's more the art of coaching that has the bigger impact, at least especially at the college level.
Yeah.
Right. Your ability to impact these guys on a psychological level, to gain their trust, form relationships, to push them beyond their own boundaries, to instill discipline and accountability. I think you can influence a team as a strength coach much more through those characteristics. And I think that's something that you naturally had. When you got into coaching, you were a natural born leader, right? You had a natural ability to communicate with guys, and just everything you just said, your ability to recognize if a certain guy is going through it, right? If you need to have a face-to-face with a guy. Do you think you were born with that? Or do you think that's something that you kind of developed it and your background, your upbringing shaped some of those leadership qualities?
I think I was born with it, but I think my background definitely shaped some of those qualities. But there's not a year in football that I can think of that I wasn't the captain on the team.
Yeah.
Even if it was unwritten, right? Like even if the media guy didn't stamp me as captain, like I've been a captain on every single team I've played on, basically every year I've played on it. And so even going back to, Pop Warner days, Little League football, I was always the captain of my team. And it's not something that I wanted to do. It's just a part of who I am. Skipping reps, I can't stand it. not going 100%, I can't stand it. And so I think the fact that I've always given everything I had and I want it for other people, like I said earlier, like that's really huge for me, is bringing other people with me, because there are guys that grew up without ever having adversity, and there are guys that grew up with adversity at every corner. And some guys that grew up with adversity at every corner use that as an excuse to not push hard. And then some guys who've had everything or who've never had adversity use that as a reason not to push hard. And obviously there's a mixed bag in there. You got some guys who, there was guys on our team that were filthy rich, and I never knew, because they were great dudes. They work hard. And had you not known had you not got to know them, you would have never known that they had that kind of money or that kind of stability. So it's definitely a mixed bag in there. But for the masses, especially in college football, you'll get a lot of guys that use excuses more often than not. And so, man, it was a no excuse type of situation for me my whole life. And to talk about one of the things that really used to bug me that now motivates me now is panhandlers, and specifically panhandlers with their kids out there on the corner with them. That used to bring me to tears, because it wasn't necessarily me. My mom wasn't on the corner, asking for money, but I was a kid that would have took everything that you would have gave me because I had nothing. Yeah. But I look at myself now and I think, look what I am. And then I think about those kids whose parents out there with nothing asking for money. Like, if those kids decide that they're not going to use that as an excuse, they're going to be dangerously good. And that's who I'm trying to push. Not just the kids who got adversity, but the kids who don't understand what it means to push. You know what I mean? And the kids who don't have perspective. And I know we'll talk about it later probably, but that's leadership is, to me, of any kind, is perspective. One is how you see yourself, how you view yourself, and how you view others. If you view yourself as a servant, as a guy that's willing to do anything for anybody, that naturally kind of bleeds off into everybody else. And then the second thing for me is consistency. If you're the same person every day, people know who you are. You know what I'm saying? And as athletes in this type of population, the successful ones, we're creatures of habit. We have a routine that we believe in that has created this success for us, and we want to do that over and over and over again. And so for me, it's all about being the same person every day. It doesn't matter what's going on the outside. When I walk in between those four walls in that building, you best believe you're going to get the best of Coach Blue every single day, and you will never know anything outside is happening.
I think that's a huge thing, being the same guy every day as a strength coach, and just being genuine, right? Like being true to who you are. I think there's some coaches out there who they try to be the rah-rah guy when that's not really them. Or they try to be the hard ass and motherfuck guys when that's not really them. And you can't maintain that every day. At some point, guys are going to sniff that out. And especially at the NFL level, those guys are very perceptive, right? They will see through bullshit immediately. So your ability to just be confident in who you are, understand who you are and who you're not, and then be who you are, the same guy, day in and day out. Guys respect that. Guys are going to respond to that.
100%. And before we move on, the sword deal, the 2-sword deal, I believe, like you said, the relationship piece, the art of coaching, I believe as an assistant, being an assistant allowed me to develop the art of coaching, right? The art of coaching came natural, but the scientific part, the knowledge part, the programming part, that allowed me to develop, So I think as a head man, I think the X's and O's do play a pivotal part. But at the end of the day, nobody cares how smart you are, to be honest. They really don't. The players do not care. And that's one of the things that I realized was, I'm going to continue to develop my craft and further my education because I have a passion for what I do. But my ability to gain trust and, you know, understand and let the guys know that I don't know something, that's more valuable than having an answer for everything.
Guys, thank you for tuning in and supporting the podcast. I just wanted to take a minute to give a shout out over to my guys at Troponent Supplements. So they're the sponsor of the podcast, and in my opinion, they carry the best supplements on the market, and it's not even close. And they're the one company that I've wanted to align myself with. As a nutrition coach, working with NFL football players, other professional athletes, strongman competitors, bodybuilders, powerlifters, fitness enthusiasts, endurance athletes, I have to be very particular about any supplement company I endorse. And with Troponent Supplements, frankly, it was a no-brainer. These are the products I've been using myself for the last few years, before I ever became involved with the company. I know the owner personally, Justin Harris. He is one of the brilliant minds in the bodybuilding industry, and we've talked, and all he has wanted to do is just bring some of the elite top-of-the-line products to the market, and that's what he's done. So these are the products I recommend and endorse to all my athletes, all my clients. I use myself, and I want to pass this along to you guys as well. So I'm going to highlight a couple products here. First and foremost, we've got the ATP. This is a high dose of caffeine paired with a very powerful nootropic. I take this before work. I take this before I podcast. This is going to give you a great boost in mood, in focus, memory enhancement. You're just going to feel like you took the Limitless pill when you use ATP. It's an effervescent tablet. You drop it in your water, it dissolves, tastes great. The next product, Field Rations. This is the premier intra-workout supplement on the market right now. It's a one-stop shop for all your intra-workout needs. It's based in highly branched cyclic dextrin, contains essential amino acids, electrolytes, tastes amazing. I use this within every training session. Then we've got the Suppressor Max. This is awesome for controlling your blood sugar. It's got a high dose of berberine, but then has complementary ingredients that are going to keep the berberine bioavailable and stay in your system longer. This is the best blood sugar product on the market. If you're bulking, if you're eating a ton of food, if you're using a cheat meal, this is a great product for you. And then finally, I love this one. I've always had sleep issues. Hit the Rack. This is one of the best sleep products I've ever tried. I use it about 30 minutes before bed most nights, and this has been the one supplement that has actually helped me fall asleep and stay asleep. And then of course, we got the Troponent T logo bodybuilding jersey and the hat. We've got great apparel on the site. So guys, check out Troponent Supplements. You can find the link in the show notes, in the bio, or you can simply just Google Troponent Supplements. Use code HECK, capital H-E-C-K, at checkout for a discount. Check them out, guys. These are some of the best products on the market.
In my opinion.
No, I couldn't agree more. And over the course of your, I mean, you quickly picked up the X's and O's. I mean, you're at a point now where you're killing it with that stuff, and you carved out a niche for yourself, coaching at UNC, working with quarterbacks, and working with the RTP group. And you had the opportunity to work with some high-level quarterbacks at our time at UNC. We had Sam Howell, we had Drake Maye, and honestly, it's a shame that our program didn't do better than it did having those two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when you hit gold like that and you've got a first-round talent at quarterback, I mean, you got to win a championship. Like, that's at the time to do it. But that might be a topic for another conversation. But just talking about coaching quarterbacks, man, I'd love to dive into, your time working with Drake Maye, your time working with Sam Howell. When you're dealing with quarterbacks, you got to approach them a little bit differently, right? And they're the leaders of the team. They're the face of the team. So the way you approach them with the art of coaching has got to be a little bit different. The way that you approach their training from the X's and O's, that's got to be a little bit different. So when you're dealing with a successful quarterback, a big name quarterback, what are some considerations that you feel like, how do you approach those guys? How do you approach, just the art of coaching with a big personality quarterback like that?
So I kind of take the position coach route in terms of if me and Drake Maye is in the room studying film and we're going over cover 2 or we're going over concepts, the only way for me to get him to understand this concept is to break it down, right? Like if we're trying to throw the turkey hole, we're looking at the corner here and we're looking at the high safety here. If this corner stays down, this safety stays high, I'm going to throw a 2-ball right in this turkey hole, understanding that this guy could bleed off, this guy could come down, but there's a timing component to it. And so understanding the drag concept, the shallow concept, the corners concept, understanding the concepts of how and why behind it. So when we get to movements, especially for the posterior of the body, the shoulder capsule and all that stuff, like, not only is it important, right, but it's what's going to transform their game. Because for me, if you can understand the sequential components of a throwing motion, then the rest kind of take care of itself, right? A guy with a big arm has a big arm, but is it big in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Is he throwing dirt balls in the fourth quarter because his arm is so big that he's completely relying on his arm? Does he not understand the transfer of force, through the torso? So those things, small drills, small exercises of understanding force transfer, you can only throw as far and as fast as you can decel that arm. And so, working on deceleration for the posterior shoulder, just overall shoulder health, torso development, force of transfer, hip dissociation. Those are just a few components that I really want to harp on, because when you get out there on the field, that's what's dictating what you do, right? Like great trunk stability, great trunk strength, having proximal and distal strength, being able to sprint with the ball in your hands, being able to throw on the run. If you don't have that thoracic spine mobility, if you don't have that rotation, then a lot of those balls will float. A lot of those balls will go in the dirt. And then just your overall athleticism. We want to build qualities in that as well. And so for me, I try to take a position coach for kind of approach and break the movements down for them and understand, look, yes, you are accurate. And this is for Sam and Drake, it was tough because it was God-given. It was natural. Like they could throw anywhere at any time to any ball. Like it didn't matter the speed of the receiver, the height of the receiver. It didn't matter. Like they were just great throwers and they understand how to throw a football. They're great football players, but they were very different. Sam was a guy who, like I said, you show me the A skip and I got it. Sam was one of those kind of guys, super athlete. If I show him one time, I didn't necessarily have to explain much to Sam. Sam just got it. From a movement standpoint, he was great. And then Drake, I would say Drake helped me become the coach that I am today because he questioned every single thing.
Yeah.
Things I didn't have an answer for, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it got me better, the hip dissociation, being able to rotate that belt buckle, understanding what that feels like, because that's happening every throw, understanding how to move from the ground up, building strength in the glutes, building strength in the torso, having mobile lats, being able to open up and throw and rotate. And so, Drake challenged me a lot in that perspective. And it was really, he was the guy who you had to be on your A game with for every single lift, because he would ask, and it wasn't anything that was malice. He was a curious guy. And I think curious people are successful. I think guys that want to know more will find out more things, and they can utilize that information how they see fit. And Drake was one of those guys.
Yeah, Sam Howell, he was a little bit more of a meathead. Like, I mean, he squatted, 500 plus, 100%. And he was a quieter, more introverted guy. But like you said, Drake, he was a lot more cerebral.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure there had to be a trust component there between you and him, right? For him to truly buy into everything that you're having him do. Like, you've got to have that legitimate trust between you guys,
100%.
to where he knows that, Joe Ken has the saying, players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yep.
Right. And did you develop a good rapport with Drake, a good relationship with him in general?
Yeah, I did. And I think Sam kind of jump started everything because of his success, right? Like I took Sam through those 3 years, and he was very successful. And I think naturally that helped me. But because Drake is a curious guy, he still wanted to find out for himself, like, okay, how can you make me better though? I know you did a good job with Sam. He was never hurt. He played in all his games. He was durable. He was strong. He was accurate. He was smart. All those things were God-given for Sam. I just had to put constraints on it, and allow him or not allow him to do certain things. But Drake was he's a competitor. Drake was a guy who he would jump over somebody in the game, get crushed, hop up, be sore on Sunday. And I'm like, hey, look, playing next Saturday is the main thing. So if you need to go to the training room, and then come back, or if you need to live on Monday instead of Sunday, we can do that. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to treat your top guys. You got to treat everybody, a certain way, but you got to protect the quarterback. And so a lot of times, man, I would try to protect Drake and he wouldn't allow it. And he was the ultimate competitor. I think me just trying to protect him, I think that gained a lot of trust, but I also never let him do a movement incorrect. Even if he questioned me on it, I never backed down from it. I never allow him to be passive in the weight room. And it was a certain standard that the quarterbacks had. After I spring block, if I still had to take you through and tell you that, or if I still had to go over and catch another quarterback doing something wrong, like I was getting on Drake about that. You know what I'm saying? Because when you line up to go out on the field and you see we got 4 or 6 men on the line of scrimmage or something like that, and we supposed to have 7, like you gonna fix that. You gonna say, hey, slide up, you off. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna let that pass. So to me, this is where those kind of traits transfer. This is the foundation of the traits because there's no football happening. So how else do you get those leadership skills? How else do you become the guy that everybody wants you to be if you're passive in a place that requires a lot of strain and a lot of consistency and a lot of effort? Yeah, I want the quarterbacks leading the way, right? I want the quarterbacks understanding that if it's 8 reps, we do 8. We don't do anything less. If it's supposed to be, if it's ask the grass, we're going to ask the grass, and so the standard is the standard for me. And the quarterbacks, they had to uphold that standard to the highest point. And that was something that I never budged on, because if I allowed them to get away with it in training, they would take those same qualities into their position coach. And that's where they would create a discourse or a disconnect, or that's where friction was created. But if I held them to a high standard in the weight room, then they just by nature knew I have to take this high standard onto the field. So, and not saying that Drake never had it, he already had it. It was just another reason. It was just another resource for me with the younger guys that didn't play to harp on that and to get more traction from them, to get more buy-in from them. It was, you better know all the warm-up, you better know the entire lift, and then if you got any correctives you need to do after that, you better do that as well. And that's something that I had to drill into these guys. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. I wanted to make it a point that we do everything the right way and we do more, whatever it is. More doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and do drop sets of failure. More just means, okay, let me take care of this shoulder, or let me get a little bit more, rotation. Let me do some mobility work, just showing guys, like, when everybody's excellent in the weight room, the quarterback's still in there getting core, or we're still getting more shoulder stability stuff. And so setting that standard was huge. And those guys, man, they carried it out, man. It was beautiful to see, to be honest. I felt good every day just knowing that at the end of this lift, the QB is going to be here for 5 to 10 more minutes. getting extra, and that was huge.
Yeah, and that goes a long way because, circling back to what I said earlier, quarterbacks, you got to treat them different.
Yeah,
They're the leaders of the program where you want them to be.
yeah,
They're the face of the program,
yeah,
and the rest of the team needs to see that, and they need to believe in
yeah,
that. And I like what you said about, if some of the backup quarterbacks weren't executing something correctly, that you would get on Drake for that because that's an opportunity to push him as a leader.
yep,
Not every young kid, even if they're incredibly talented and great players at quarterback, they don't necessarily have it in them naturally to be confrontational with guys and to get on guys and to hold the team to a standard. And I think that's something you can help develop in the weight room, is developing that confidence, developing that ability to be confrontational when you need to be, or even praising your teammates
yep,
at the right times. And that's a way that you can impact the team's success as a whole. Because if you're pushing the quarterback to be a better leader in the weight room, and that's translating to the field, that's translating to more wins.
yep,
Right?
100%.
One thing that I always wondered about it and was worried about, quarterbacks, they get trained a lot of times separately, right? The quarterback group is maybe off to the side or maybe even in a separate lift. And it's good in one sense because you're able to give them truly focused, separate training that's specific to them. But there was always part of me that was like, man, like, I wish they were a little bit more in the heat of things with a rep with the guys,
Yep.
right? To just further develop that chemistry among the other players.
Yeah.
What are some ways that, you're able to push Drake in that way or get him a little bit more in the mix with the other guys in a training standpoint, so he wasn't so isolated, just, on the fringe doing his own thing?
Yeah, so that's funny that you said that. His last season, I actually moved him in the middle of the weight room.
There you go.
So I put the QBs in the middle of the room with the rest of the big dogs, and they were there working, man. And it's funny because a lot of guys be like, man, look at this easy stuff y'all doing, bottoms up kettlebell, rotations, Cuban press, all that kind of stuff. And then you get a guy with, a banged up shoulder, get a shoulder sprain, and, we got to modify his lift. So we bring him to the QB lift, and they like, wow, I didn't know that this was this hard. And so, they get it, they kind of get respect for the cues in terms of their ability to work and what they're doing, from a day-to-day basis when they experience it themselves, and then on top of that, conditioning, like Drake didn't lose conditioning reps. Like that's another thing that people don't know. Like Drake was an absolute animal in conditioning. And when he didn't win, you best believe I was barking every single time, because you can't just be a great thrower or a great lifter. No, a QB has to be a jack of all trades, in a sense that, yeah, he's got one position, but he's also got another position in terms of how he approaches the workout, how he executes the workout, how he picks up after himself in the cafeteria. All of those things come back to the field. Because if I got to run extra sprints because I left some soda in the players' lounge, but I saw Drake do it 2 hours earlier, now I'm like, even though nobody said anything to Drake, I'm salty. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's those things. And then if Drake did do it, if he did pick up this drink, he can come to you and be like, hey, bro, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we pick our shit up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to take care of our home. Like, we do this in here, we can do this out here. You know what I mean? And so I was always on them about conditioning. I put them in the middle of in the room, in the middle of the guys, so that they could see, so they can be around. And even though we were doing a separate program, when it came to big benches or something like that, like Drake would be over there, over top of a guy while he's benching, like, yeah, let's go. One more rep. But otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do that if I had him in the corner of a room. And when a guy like Drake is standing over you while you benching, whether you offense or defense, you you can feel his presence, and you get that rush from a guy like that that's in the room with you, that's so elite at what he does. You're going to get a benefit from him being around. So I knew that, one, it would help Drake become more of a team guy. Not team guy, but a team leader. It would help him have more influence over his guys. And then two, it was good for him, to be in the midst and to see who he could trust as well. Because I'm not gonna throw to some Joe Blow who's over here skipping reps.
Mm-hmm.
Expect to score 3 tugs on Saturday. Like, nah, it don't work like that.
Yeah, just all going back to the art of coaching, man. None of that stuff don't learn any of that stuff in a textbook, in the classroom, none of that stuff. But that's the stuff that translates to wins and losses.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, I was just having this conversation the other day. You'll never look back at the end of the season and be like, man, we probably would have won more games if we just had run a different squat cycle, or just had a different, Olympic progression. But you probably will look back and say, we didn't push our quarterback to be a better leader, or we didn't instill accountability with our DBs, or whatever the case may be. It's those little intangible factors as a strength coach that you can really instill in individual players and the team as a whole. That's going to matter more than any of the X's and O's that you're doing in the weight room. Right?
100%.
And I know you had a big impact on Drake and on Sam.
Yeah.
But moving on here for the sake of time, I just want to touch on RTP a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I had our mutual friend, Coach Q Wiley, on here for an earlier episode, and we went real into the X's and O's of RTP. So I won't go too much into the actual methodologies, but again, going into the art of coaching, when you're working with RTP guys, you're dealing with guys who finding intrinsic motivation is a lot harder, right? You're not with the group. You're in pain. You're limited. How do you approach those guys as a coach? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep those guys in the game?
Well, I think for one, we all want to be a part of something, right? Like, things that resonate with us bring us closer to that situation, that circumstance, that environment. And so me being injured and having gone through what I went through, that was always a key point for me. Talking about my injury, talking about my past, and, the mistakes I made along the way. And this is why I'm here, so that these guys don't make those same mistakes. And they're like, I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? And so, one, I think it's trust. If they don't trust you to get them better, then they won't get better. It'll be a lot of missing pieces in there. Two is communication. There's nothing more important than communication, right? Like, I need to know how every rep felt, and I need honest feedback, because if I can't have your honest feedback, then I can't help. So trust, communication, and then last but definitely not least is confidence, right? Like, so how do you build confidence? For me, it's starting at step 0, step 1, right? Like, we're going to crawl, and then we're going to walk, then we're going to jog, skip, and then we're going to sprint and jump, right? So I don't care that you think that you can sprint. You're going to show me that you can crawl. You're going to show me that you can walk, and then we're going to move ahead. Now, your progression may be a lot faster than that said player that also got injured and had the same injury and maybe even on the same timeline. But you're going to have to show me first. So I love the fact that they build confidence from doing the easy things, right? And those easy things, build the confidence from those easy things, build into being more confident going into those harder things, right? Like false throws, false steps, building that capacity to decelerate, having good core development, so that they can transfer force, finding muscle memory and rhythm back. A lot of the stuff I do or I did was all coordination based, rhythm based, timing based. Can you do this? Can you do that? Throwing tennis balls against the wall, stuff that has a high success rate. And I always say the best coaches are coaches that create confidence, right? The best coaches are the coaches that don't program for themselves, they program for the athletes. So for me, it didn't matter what I felt like he should do or what I thought he could do. I wanted to do something that would build his confidence, right? So, man, I remember taking one of the athletes through just some marching, right? And before we got into our change of direction, I would make a march from side to side, and like that was huge for them. Simple, right? Nothing crazy, but it's the methodology that you use, right? It's the art of coaching. It's the confidence at the end of the day. It's the trust. It's the communication. It's them knowing that you got their best interests at heart. That's going to ultimately pay off. And when they do accomplish something simple, you celebrate them for that. And then when they do have bad days, you give them grace. Tell them to give themselves grace. It's a long road back to recovery. And the more negative you are or pessimistic you are, the longer the recovery is. Now, being happy and go lucky doesn't necessarily speed it up, but the body understands stress in different ways, right? Like the body takes on stress in different ways. And so gratitude, having a positive outlook, I really think that gives the body more energy. I think it gives the body more of a positive outlook. And as long as your outlook is positive, you can continue to make gains because now you understand that, I'm going to be sore tomorrow. And then when you are sore, that's confirmation that, okay, he told me I would be sore. I'm going to trust in the process. You know what I'm saying? And then understanding that it doesn't have to be a linear progression either. Like, if you ain't feeling it today, I'm cool with that. Let's go back down and let's master some stuff that we've already mastered just to make sure that we're in the space that we think we're in. So being able to go back and do things that they had high success in is also a key component to RTP, right? Like the pendulum has swung to so much technology that the coaches don't even interact with the players anymore. They look right down at the interface and be like, you only hit 16 miles per hour. Like they don't care. Like they do care about their velocity, but that shouldn't be your job. That shouldn't be your main focus as a coach, right? And so, again, having that human interaction, that player-coach relationship is the biggest thing, and making them feel like you're in their corner there's nothing bigger than that to me.
I couldn't agree more. And those skill sets that you developed in that RTP setting are going to serve you well in the NFL, especially as you get in season. Man, the NFL season's long. I mean, it's the preseason, 3 weeks, camp, then you 18-week regular season, then you make the playoffs. Guys are going to be beat up. There's going to be wear and tear on them. Guys are going to get hurt. And having that skill set as a coach is going to be absolutely huge, especially at the NFL level.
Yeah.
But Blue, with us, we're past an hour here. I just want one more topic to hit you on, then I'll let you go. I want to touch on just social media a little bit because I just pulled up your Instagram here. You got 130,000 followers on there right now. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of coaches starting to adopt that more, getting on social media, posting some training content from their team. And I think it's a powerful tool. I think in today's day and age, it's an asset that if you're not leveraging it, you're behind a little bit. And I think there's also a little bit of still some stigma around it. I don't want to be a self-promoter. I don't want to be, side-eyed by the older generation for using social media. But I mean, everything is on social media now. I mean, there's so many coaches that I am aware of because of social media, right? I see the things that they're posting. I see the quality of training that they're utilizing, and I can see that they can eloquently explain what they're doing. I mean, there's so many coaches, I would have no idea of their existence if it wasn't for social media. So Just talk about a little bit, when did that become something that you start putting a little bit of effort into, and do you think it's been a benefit to you in your career?
So I would say COVID, I started training in my garage,
Yeah.
and I will always record myself just because I wanted to see what it looked like. Um, and being an introvert and not really knowing the X's and O's, like people harp on, or, you know, not really knowing everything, at least feeling like I didn't. I was always hesitant to put stuff out.
Yeah.
And then COVID came, and, I will post a story here of doing the exercise. I'll post a story there, and like the messages, the comments I would get, the fire emojis, all that stuff just kind of like helped me come out of my shell a little bit. And so I just started posting more and more, and then the traction just started coming. But if you look at my page, man, it's all content. Like there's a few pictures of me, but mostly it's just all content. So that was just kind of my driving force. Like it started as, okay, I want to put out the best videos I can. And then as I got older and I became more knowledgeable, it was like, how can I provide content for the coaches that don't have the resources that I have, that don't have the equipment that I have, that don't have the ability to go to conferences, the ability to have the school pay for, professional development. Like, how can I get this content out to them? And so I just started posting everything that I could think of that I thought was valuable, and it ended up being valuable. And then, started going to conferences. I believe I was at I can't remember the year we played Oregon.
That was 23. That was my last year at Carolina. I'm sorry. It was 22 or 23.
22 or 23. So at this point, I'm probably at like 25,000 followers, but it wasn't anything that was like, it still wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean? And then I put a quarterback program out, and that was like my first like big reel. It was like 180, 190,000 people saw it. And when I put the QB program out, I got like 10,000 followers in like the next month. And then that just gave me even more drive to start putting out more content. And I'm always very conscious about what kind of content I put out. Still, like I said, I'm an introvert, so there's a lot of smart people on social media, including yourself. Like, I've always looked up to you, and the way you could articulate the things that you want to do and the way that you can describe it and stuff like that, man, is just second to none. Like, even our recruiting talks, it's amazing. Nothing short of amazing how you can deliver your words. And
That's why I started a podcast, man. I love people.
it's awesome how you speak. It's very high level. And so a lot of my posts don't have a lot of description or a lot of captions underneath them, because of that very reason of just my lack of, I guess, I ain't gonna say lack of confidence, but just knowing that there's so many smart people out there, and knowing the type of person I don't back down from nothing. So, I don't want to get into some social media fight with some guy who I'll never meet, who can't probably beat me anyway. And so, you know what I'm saying? So, that's not my style. I've changed a lot since then. So my goal was, again, to put out content that coaches that didn't have the resources could benefit from. And if you look at my content, there's not a lot of equipment in there. There's no 1080s. There's no force plates.
Yeah.
There's no jammers. It's all dumbbell, barbell, that type of work. And if it ain't that, then it's just movement. And if you look at my page, anybody can take what I do off of there and do it. And you don't need to buy anything. You can just do it as is, most likely. In today's time, everybody has a little bit of something. So that's kind of how it started, man. And since then, I'm very particular about what I put out. But I feel like I'm at a spot now where, humbly speaking, everything I put out is good because I care that much and I'm passionate about what I do. So it's no longer for the likes and stuff like that. It's because I believe in it, and the people just confirmation that it's working.
Yeah, man. I mean, like you said, it's a great way to give back to the strength and conditioning community a little bit. I mean, the younger generations, they're seeing the training that you're putting out there, and they're taking things away from that, right? And I hope that I do the same with my stuff. And I'm seeing other coaches on social media, and I'm looking at their training. I'm like, oh man, that's a great idea, or I love that setup that they did there, or I love that little field work progression that they put out there.
Yeah.
And in certain ways, it makes you a better coach because it makes you more conscientious about how you're articulating, the exercise, the progression, right? Because like you said, you don't want to put something out there that someone's going to see that and be like, oh, this guy's a fraud. Like you better know what you're talking about. You better put something out there that's quality and reflects well on the program.
Yep.
Right. So it forces you to really think about that stuff. And then I think it helps with exposure.
100%.
Right. I mean, I guarantee it helped me in my career. There were more coaches who were aware of me. And then I think it helped me, 6'7", big guy, former athlete. I carried the stigma of, oh, he's going to be the dumb meathead. Right? But being able to get on social media and to show, no, I can articulate intelligent thoughts, and speak, and I know what I'm talking about. I think that was helpful for me. And then, just doing what I'm doing now in the private sector, running my own business, I built my business entirely. The backbone of it was social media, right? Yeah. All my marketing is all my exposure. It's everything.
Yeah. So 100%.
I think more coaches out there, like, don't be afraid to put more stuff out there.
Yeah.
Right? And operate within reason, right? Make sure that you're not putting out content that is crossing a line with divulging too much of what the program's doing, or there's certain things that you shouldn't put out there for the world to see, right? And
Yeah.
I think there's a line to walk where you're not being overly a me guy, right? But like you and me, with the content we post, it's highlighting the team.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the spotlight on me. It's putting the spotlight on the players or on the program.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's something that more coaches should be more confident about.
I agree.
But anyway, Blue, I'm going to wrap it up here. You are awesome. And I'm glad I just got to catch up with you. And I know that you're out in Miami killing it, and the Dolphins they're lucky to have you. And I know it's a good challenge for you, and you're just pushing yourself to be better and better and better. But man, where can people, touching back on the social media, where can people find you?
Coach AJ Blue. The system's a little different now, being in the NFL.
Yeah.
I haven't posted any content really since I've been here, but I'll get back into the swing of things. This is priority, making sure that I fit, making sure that, I prove my worth. That's most important. I think we get a little distracted, when it comes to that kind of stuff, and we get a little too indulged into the social media and to the likes and stuff like that. So this has been a good break for me, but I'm looking forward to coming back, on social media, seeing with some really good content. And Coach AJ Blue, you can find me there, and I look forward to meeting you soon.
Yeah, guys, go give him a follow on Instagram. AJ Blue, he's a coach I've got a lot of respect for. Like I said, as a coach, as a leader, and as a friend. So I'm going to give a quick plug to some of my services before we wrap it up here, guys. I offer coaching for nutrition and for training. You can find my coaching services on my website, hammerchiselperformance.com. I've got my training programs available on there as well. And you can follow me on Instagram, whattheheck71, John Heck. I post daily training and nutrition content. You can shoot me a DM with coaching inquiries. And then every Tuesday, be dropping episodes of the podcast with guest interviews, doing a Q&A answered episode once a month. Go ahead, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll be putting out more long form content out on there. But anyway, Coach Blue, appreciate you coming on, man.
I appreciate you, brother. It was nice connecting with you again.
Yes, sir. We'll talk soon. All right, guys.